Hi once again and welcome back to Dusting History. I picked this image today because I thought it would be quite a good challenge. You can sort of see how the black parts of this old image have turned blue in time, and that can be quite a challenge to fix. So I thought it would be a good exercise just to test a few theories I had. I think it's got something to do just with the age of the print and maybe some kind of chemical reaction that turns that blue. But you can see if you turn the saturation down, it not only is blue, it's quite grainy and it's also quite lifted, so you kind of get this paleness in the areas that should have been the most dark. The way I'm going to combat this is by using color range in Photoshop. So I'm going to select some of those blues and adjust the fuzziness, which means it's sampling anything that's blue that I've sampled and any colors around that in terms of its palette. So I'm just going to adjust the fuzziness and adjust the sampling until I feel like I've got a pretty good representation for those areas that are that kind of blue color. And as you can see, it makes a marquee selection of that. So when I add a curves layer adjustment, it also automatically puts that selection into the mask. Now turning my hue and saturation back on, or maybe not, you can see if I adjust the curves layer here, it actually does a pretty good job of taking out that blue, but actually, as you can see, I've sampled a little too much and the grain on her cheek is getting graded down as well, which means I'm sort of attacking more of an area than I really should. So what I'm going to need to do is attack this slightly more carefully and in stages. So I'll delete that and we'll start again. So going to select color range. I'm going to select an area there that wasn't quite as affected as some of the darker points, and be really careful I'm selecting blues and not actually any of those sepia brown colors, and make a finer selection that isn't quite as aggressive. So this way when I adjust that down, I'm actually not going to be affecting the whole part of the damage, but just the one area of it, like one selected area. So you can see her nostrils and her lips and her eyeballs are still going to be blue, and they're going to be quite unaffected by this adjustment. And I really want to work to preserve as much of the hair detail as I can. So here you can see there's still some blue there that was not adjusted by that color selection. So I'm going to do another color range and now pick this area which was more dense or should be blacker as a second adjustment. And again, I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer. Put that above my first one, and again it's automatically made a mask of that area. And now when I adjust that on top, I can target just those areas of the blue damage and get it a little closer without, hitting the whole image at once and affecting areas I don't want to. Now we've still got a little bit more, so now I'm going to adjust these areas. Now I've noticed here you can't do a color range selection when you have all your other layers turned on, so I'm going to turn them off, but then I can't tell which bits are not adjusted yet. So every time I'm just picking on a slightly different part of the damage and adjusting it to a luminance level that I think works with the whole image. But I'm a little unhappy here that I've got still some grain in there. I haven't been able to correctly select all those parts of the blue that I really wanted to affect. They're the bits I really need to hit, but I can't select them whilst I have those layers turned on. And if I turn the layers off, I stop actually being able to see the ones I want to hit. So what I've got here, and you can't see, is I've got my finger on the screen pointing at the 2 pixels I want to adjust. And so that's the only way I can actually correctly sort of select that area. So I'll select that little range there, and hopefully that's grabbed the last of the damage. So this is really a step repeat here, again with the curves, and bring it to the top. It's auto-generated the mask, turn everything back on, and then I can adjust that area. Haven't been entirely successful with my selection, but I think it still helps. As you can see, where it was blue and affected, it is still very grainy, and I think that'll be the next thing I try to correct. But before that, I haven't actually color corrected the image as a whole, so I'll put a curves adjustment layer and just play with the contrast levels a little bit, and you can see that already those adjustments I've made with each of those selection sets below has really helped the image and really brought it to life. Now onto fixing the grain issue. So what I'll try and do here is combine those masks by hitting Control and selecting them all, and then duplicating my work and then collapsing it down into a single copy of that image, and then using the combined masks to isolate just that area of the image that had noise. So really it's taking all my previous selections and compiling them into one. With that done, I can go to the dust and scratches panel, and you can see that what it does is it does a pretty good job of removing high frequency noise. And by playing with the settings somewhat, you can see that you get different results. Some of it's a bit blobby. I'm just trying to get rid of the highest amount of stipple out of that area. So it has a slightly similar grain profile to the rest of the photo. You can kind of see what that does there. It does make it a slightly glowy, slightly halo-y, and it does actually affect a few areas, like it put a bunch of noise in her nostril. You can see her nostril's quite bright. I'm feathering the mask just a bit, because the mask was generated from all those fine stipples, so by softening it a little bit, it just softens the effect of that scratch removal. And I'm just going to paint away some areas I don't want to affect, particularly that nostril that was bothering me. And there I was just playing with mixing that layer back a bit so it wasn't completely 100%. Alright, now this next bit might be a little controversial. As you can see, that's a close-up of the image where we stand. What I've done is this. I've put it into Remini, which is an online image AI sharpening tool, and just let it do its thing. And it gives you a very, very clean AI sort of generated version of the image. Too far for my tastes. I mean, it's photographic and all, but it's just, you know, it's not the original girl. So what I like to do is I do like to try it out and see what it does, but as you'll see here, I'm mixing it back to like 25%. So really all it's doing is just adding a tiny bit of sharpening to the image. Also, I've duplicated it here and I've put it back up to 100 because I like how it smoothed out her cheek. It's a pretty nondescript part of her face, and I feel pretty confident rubbing back through to the Remini version of the image just to flatten out some of that solid grain that's in her skin tone. And you'll see I did a little bit on her brow, but turn that off. So really, if you look at those three layers, the bottom's the original, the second one is 25% mix of sharpness from the Remini, and then the top one is just just bringing through a few spots a little stronger where it was nicely flattened out in the image. Alright, onto a rapid cleanup of the rest of the frame. I am keeping the black border. I do like the fact that this is kind of a glam postcard. I like to keep that idea rather than try to pass it off just as a straight up photograph. What I'm doing here is I'm using select subject in Photoshop to select her, the girl, and then I will also select the black border, and I'll do that in an attempt to isolate the brown field behind her, because while I do think it would have had some pattern in it, I think some of that blotchiness is a result of age and some damage to the print. So I've selected her, but I haven't actually selected that black border. So you see if I paint a color here, I'm actually going to paint over the border. So I will go to select color range again, select that black, and in my mask here, just using a black paintbrush, add that black border to my mask layer. And rather than just paint grey into the image, the first thing I try to do is duplicate the picture, and then using that mask, try to blur the background, but it actually halos everything pretty badly. So you'll see here I abandon that, and I go back to painting some grey. That is, of course, once I get my act together and work out what I'm doing, selecting that. So I'm selecting the grey that's under the paintbrush at the time, and then using it to paint. This is all, of course, way too strong, but at least I have a sort of sympathetic grey all the way around the image. And then you'll see here, I'll just mix it back somewhat. So there's some semblance of that noise or the patina, but it's not entirely gone. And then I'll just back it off in a few spots to sort of restore the hair detail to make sure I'm not losing too much of that. There you go. And that's about as far as I'll take that image, but I thought it would be an interesting exercise anyway, and I was pretty happy with the result. Hope you learned something, I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye.